Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layouts, and today I am back with another whole picture sketch number 6 from Scrapbook Generation. I pulled out this super old kit from my mind's eye called My Girl, and I'm going to be documenting some photos of us playing bingo on a cruise. Which, when I say that, I feel like an old lady. I know that lots of people play bingo, but in my mind, like, bingo is like an old lady thing. It always reminds me of My Girl. Do you guys remember that scene when she was like outside and she was like, bingo? It was so funny. I have no idea why I started this video out like that, but like that was my memory when I was like looking through the collections trying to find something for this particular layout, and I saw the My Girl collection and I was like, oh, of course I have to use that on this bingo layout. You guys know that I love Scrapbook Generation's whole picture book. It's an amazing sketchbook because it only focuses on 4x6 photos. This particular sketch has 5 photos, 3 on the left and 2 on the right. This beautiful design of strips, which again, you guys know I love some strips. I was able to mainly just use scraps on this paper. There are several, like the orange and the yellow and even that red, that I'm going to stretch because I'm going to hide it behind the photo and paper on the right hand side. So I pulled out this grid paper because the sketch calls for a sheet of 6x8, and then you're going to add a 4x6 photo to the right hand side. The sketch basically calls for a row of 4x6 photos, and then instead of 2 additional photos on the right hand side, it has an 8x6 sheet of paper, and then you're going to add 1 6x4 photo in the horizontal orientation. So I get the grid paper down and I just put a little X in the center of that grid paper because I knew that I was going to be tucking pieces on the top and bottom. I pulled out my T-square ruler and I started at the top. I started with the blue stars, and I knew that I wanted to overlap the orange on top of the 2 patterns that were next to it. So I added the red one next, and then I added the orange on top of it, but then quickly realized that I needed to put the bottom down so that I could make sure that they were lined up evenly. So I got the bottom blue stars down, the red chevron down, and then put the orange on top of it. I really zoomed in on the sketch. You guys know I store my sketches on my iPad or in Google Drive. So I was able to see which of the strips were overlapping and then also which of the strips had a little bit of gap between them. And I will tell you that I love the way that this came out. This is one of those collections that I don't know that I will ever get rid of. Very rarely do I use the embellishment pieces with this collection because it is a very girl layout, but the color combination of the dark colors like that gray with the stars and the blue and the red, it's just not your typical girl collection. It has all the pretty girl colors that I love, like the pinks and that like darker red, almost pink color as well. And then it throws in blues and yellows. I wish that companies would make more collections that include all of these colors because my mind's eye was on point when they put this collection together. And I will tell you, it is super old. But this layout came together so well. I did add my photo down because I knew that the strips were going to overlap the photo a little bit. The sketch really calls for the strips of paper to be within that 6x8, but I wanted to add a little bit more. It also called for a 1/4 inch strip, and I decided that I was going to use this chevron paper on the far left, and I wanted like the full chevron, so I did make it a little bit larger. I then pulled out my very favorite wood grain because I did feel like the 1/4 inch strip that was going to separate the strips of paper needed to be like a solid color because there's so much pattern going on in this layout. I get the adhesive down on all 4 of the 1/4 inch strips, and then I lay the 1/4 inch strip down on the bottom half of the layout on the right hand side. And then I go to add the top 1/4 inch strip, and I thought, oh, I need to adhere down my photo and that 6x8 sheet of paper because I had only put like a small little adhesive on it. But then after I adhered the photo down, I realized I forgot to add the 1/4 inch strip on top of the blue paper. So I had to pull up the wood grain. I didn't pull it up completely. I just pulled it up enough so that I was able to get that 1/4 inch strip down. Well, then it made me realize that my photo on the right wasn't straight, because you know, I don't ever get anything straight. So I pulled the photo up and then got that back down straight. And then using my Stampin' Up! Banner punch, I put a banner on that 1/4 inch strip. I used the Stampin' Up! Banner punch on each one of the strips. I put the strip down at the top, but then realized that I wanted more of the brighter colors at the top because there was some blues and I didn't want it to get lost. I do end up obviously having blues because it's closer to the photo, but I felt like having the more brighter colors like the red, yellow, orange, and pink at the top really helped that piece of paper stand out. And then down at the bottom, I made sure that the colors that were showing were those brighter colors. Now that I have everything down, I went ahead and added the 1/4 inch strip of the wood grain at the top of the paper and photo on the right hand side. And then I pulled out my left hand side of the layout. On the left, I have 3 photos that we took of us on the cruise. So this was a birthday cruise that I went on for my 40th birthday, and all 3 of us turned 40 around the same time. Like, our birthdays are very close together. They're in February, March, and May. So at the end of February, we decided to take this cruise and celebrate all of our birthdays together. So I'm in the center, and then my 2 friends are on the left and right. And luckily, the way that we were able to take the photos, they are almost like looking into me in the center. So it made it very easy to put the photos down, and they come together really well. And I really like the way that the photos look on the left-hand side. And then, of course, adding the 1/4 inch strip in that wood grain to the top and bottom of the photos. So now that I have the base of the layout down, I went in and trimmed off the excess because, you know, I can't ever get anything straight. So I always end up paper shaving a little bit to make it appear like it's straight. And it does go into the album just a little bit easier if you paper shave just a little bit. Then on the right hand side of the layout, I added the 6x4 photo. That photo is of a tablet. The cruise had 2 options, and we did both options. The traditional paper bingo cards, and then you also had the ability to use a tablet, which was a lot of fun to have both of them. And I had never played bingo before. This was my first time, and it was like all over the place. First of all, they go super fast with those numbers. Trying to keep up and like look at all of my cards at the same time while I'm listening to them. And then obviously there's lots of chatter going around. It was an exciting time for sure. I then pulled out my stitching tools, and I wanted to add some stitching to my strips. I have this Tim Holtz ruler, and I just recently purchased this, like within the last 6 months, and it is already sold out everywhere. It is linked below over on Amazon, even though it's sold out, because I thought at least if you had the information, you could then do a search and see if you could find it elsewhere. But let me know if you're able to find it, because I would love to be able to link it. I then pulled out my threads, and I wanted to do like a tone on tone for my threads. And of course, there's so much color going on that I was able to choose lots of fun colors. Now for my title, I purchased this cut file from Peartree Cutfiles. If you guys remember, I did another layout, and I will link it here, where I had found the Peartree Cutfile website. I actually found them through Scrapbook.com, and I loved that cut file. So when I was thinking about doing these photos, I thought maybe I should go look over there and see if they have any fun cut files that would work. And they have this bingo cut file. Look how cute that is. This is only the second time that I have purchased cut files. Now remember, the other layout was the first time I had ever used a cut file, and then I tried the cut files with the Bella Boulevard's Let's Scrapbook collection. But I really enjoy purchasing the cut files because then I'm able to size it to whatever size that I need. And I knew that I wanted this cut file to be a title, so I knew I wanted it to be larger, but I didn't want it to be huge like the Let's Scrapbook ones from Bella Boulevard. So once I have the cut file off of my silhouette mat, I start backing it. And my thought process was to back the cut file in the same order of my strips on the right hand side of the layout. Of course, I have more strips on the right than I do on the left, so I was pulling out the ones that were prominent as well as ones that would work. On the right hand side, there is a strip that has like the pie charts on it, and that wouldn't look really good with the cut files, so I skipped over that. So I started out with the blue stars, and then I brought in the orange solid. Then I did the red chevron, I skipped over the pie charts, went to the gray stars, and then I did the plaid. I was still able to bring in the pie chart. My thought process was that the bottles are usually a solid color, and then the center of it has the logo. So I thought, even though I didn't want to put a logo on it, this little pie chart could represent a logo or a design. And I really like the way that this came out. So I put the pie chart down first behind the cut file, and then put the yellow behind the pie chart. I think that it turned out amazing. And that's one of the things that I am really starting to enjoy about cut files, is that it goes with whatever your layout does. I know cut files have been around for a while. I know I'm like really late to the game in regards to cut files, but this one was a fun one to work with. On the cut file, it also has 2 sheets of paper. And so I thought those sheets of paper need to be like bingo cards. You guys know I don't have a lot of stamps, so I really had to pull it out with this one. I have one stamp set that is an alphabet, and I have one stamp set that has the dates 1 through 31. So my thought was I will put in the word BIN, because that's all you can really see on the cut file. And then I used the numbers from the calendar, and then I lined them up where they would be like on a bingo card. And then I used a circle to daub the ones that I didn't have the numbers for, so it looked like I had already gotten those numbers. And I love the way that it came out. So I had cut the cut file without all of the shapes, just a plain cut file. And I like to have that as a background. And for this particular one, I am taking the background, putting the stamped images on that, and then laying the cut file on top of it to make sure that it lines up. Then once I get it all completely done, I cut off the bingo part of it because I knew I didn't need that. I just wanted the paper piece. I also used the ink to ink on the paper where the dauber would be, so it looks like the ink is coming out of the dauber. This cut file also had these 3 little circles with the number 57, 88, and 12. They basically are bingo balls. So I cut those out as well, and I'm going to back them. Circles are so hard to cut, so I thought maybe I have a circle cutter that will work for this. But what I cut out was a little bit bigger than 1 1/4, but not quite as big as 1 1/2. So I first cut out a 1 1/2 inch circle. That was too big. I then cut it down to 1 1/4, and it was really kind of too small. It covers the backing, but it only really adhered to the number 88. It does not touch the white circle at all. So then I pulled back in the right-hand side, and I'm trying to decide which pattern I didn't have that I could use on the other bingo balls. I ended up using the red chevron for one of them, and I decided to forego the punch and just cut it out. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to adhere it to the back, and no one's going to see it anyways. It's okay that it's not perfect. Once I got it down, I did use my scissors to trim off a little bit to make sure that it was completely hidden behind the white circle. And then I used the plaid for the number 12, and I made sure that I placed it in an exact spot on the plaid so that you could really see the number 12, because the plaid is very busy. But the way I lined it up, I think it turned out nice. So I'm going to add my bingo title to the left-hand side, and I'm okay with the bottom half of that cut file covering up the photo, because really all it's covering up is like background photo. And it really does draw your eye into the photo because it sits right in between myself and my friend. I did put the cut file flat down to the layout, but I decided to add the bingo balls up on dimension. The 2 bingo balls I used fun foam, so that's about 2 millimeters. And then I used the 1 millimeter from scrapbook.com to add the number 88, so they sit at a different height. And I'm really enjoying having the different heights. The collection did come with this sheet of buttons. I decided to adhere this red button down and put some string on it. And then as I'm doing this voiceover, I realized I did not put string in the other 2 buttons. So I might have to go back and do that. I also pulled out the enamel brads, and they are starting to yellow, but I just went with it. It doesn't bother me. Now, my title of bingo would have been fine as it is, but I wanted to make sure that it was clear that we were on the cruise. Obviously this is going to go like with all the other cruise photos, but just adding an extra touch to it. So my title is actually going to be Bingo on the Cruise, which I know is like amazing. It just blew your mind, right? With that amazing title. This is the die set that I recently picked up. It's by Concord and Ninth, and it's a friendship die, and it comes with both squares and circles. I did not purchase the stamp because my thought process was that I would print out the letters and then die cut them, but I think I'm going to go back and purchase the stamp. I have only one stamp that has letters, and it's a little big. It does not fit on the squares. It only fits on the circles, and it goes really edge to edge. It did take me quite a few attempts to figure out where to place the stamp to make sure that it was in the center. And then I did stack them like I would stack my stars. So I stacked them on 2 other circles. You can see here that I was testing it out on the square, but it is definitely way too big for the square. So I have been adding items to my scrapbook.com order, and that order just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But this is one of those things that I will probably end up adding this stamp set to as well. I will link it below if you guys want to check it out. Once I get them all stamped, I use my tweezers and my glue press to get the title down. My thought process was that I wanted the word cruise to be on the photos, and I made sure that the letter U was sitting right in between the photos, so it brought the photos together. And then of course I cut out a bunch of tiny stars, and I'm adding it around the layout as well. I add some up in the upper left hand corner next to my title. Of course I'm going to add them around the bingo balls, and then I also add it to the right hand side of my title. I feel like tiny stars can go anywhere, and I may go a little overboard with them, but that's okay because it's just a perfect touch. I did journal off camera and used my journaling die to cut them out. My journaling says, Tiffany, Jennifer, and I decided to test our luck at bingo on the cruise, aiming for those epic prizes. We dabbed with the classic bingo cards and even gave the tablet version a whirl. Spoiler alert, no wins, but we sure did have a blast. Once I stacked them 3 high, I adhered them to my layout. And then that is it for this video. Here is my final layout as well as some close-ups. Definitely check out the links below for the Peartree Cutfiles. I'm finding lots of fun cut files to use over there. And if you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page layout inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.